African American women have made and continue to make large contributions to the automobile industry labor force while overcoming many obstacles, prejudices, and disappointments. Throughout the history of the automobile industry, African American women have challenged the status quo, competed equally with men in male-dominated arenas, and opened doors for workers' and women's rights. African American women have demanded their right to work and be treated fairly where they are qualified, capable, and willing. By 1900, 41% of black women were employed, and 12% of these women were employed outside of the field and the home. Prior to 1910, the majority of African Americans lived in the southern states, where job opportunities were generally limited to farming and domestic services. In the years between 1910 and 1920, 1.2 million African Americans moved to northern cities. This movement became known as the Great Migration and changed the demographic of the African American community. World War I, which began in 1914, became the main contributor to the migration. The labor force of the North was mostly made up of white males, many of whom were being drafted. European immigrants, who were also attaining many northern jobs, were now being held overseas. White women and African Americans became candidates for jobs in industries never before available to them. One of these industries was the automobile industry. Black women, like men, emigrated north to take advantage of the new job prospects. Some moved north with the assistance of employment agencies that offered to purchase them a bus ticket if they agreed to work as domestic servants. Other young women traveled on their own looking for better opportunities. More common, however, were women who moved because of family and personal ties with someone already established in a northern city. Whatever their reason for moving north, upon arrival, African American women found jobs were still quite limited. Clerical and sales jobs were almost always unattainable. Therefore, they accepted jobs in domestic service as live-in servants, daytime servants, and caregivers. Although positions as laundresses were quickly becoming obsolete as affordable home washing machines were becoming popular, manufacturing jobs were scarce, and of the small percentage of African American women working in manufacturing, 20% were dressmakers who worked out of their own home. As World War I forged on, the emerging auto industry in Detroit, as well as in several industries around the country, put their core business on hold to help in the war effort. This provided opportunities for all women to receive higher pay and more work experience. Nevertheless, very few of these jobs were available to African American women. White men who were not fighting in the war, black men or white women were still the priority for available jobs. Yet, when hired, black women performed the most strenuous labor, received the lowest pay, and were usually the first to be laid off or fired. It took a few decades of proving themselves before black women gained a greater foothold as workers in the auto industry.